Welcome, C-suite executives and ESG leaders, to this high-level explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a topic that is absolutely vital for the future of your organization. We're going to look at how to take invisible behavioral threats and actually flip them into a massive competitive advantage using intelligent data. You see, these internal risks are particularly dangerous because they tend to fester entirely unnoticed by upper management. They just quietly erode company culture and operational efficiency, right up until your top talent simply walks out the door. So we're going to explore how we can fundamentally shift our approach, proactively identifying these vulnerabilities and transforming them into strategic strengths. Here is our quick roadmap for today's analysis. We'll start with the new ESG risks, quantify the financial and regulatory stakes, introduce the ETHIKYOU solution, look at the science and team behind it, explore enterprise use cases, and finally, look ahead to the incoming wave of the social taxonomy. All right, let's jump right in. Section 1. The new ESG risks, the invisible threat. We're starting off by exposing a completely unprecedented internal threat. The corporate world is facing something really unique right now, a disruption that isn't coming from external competitors, but from the inside out. It's basically a domino effect. It all starts with step 1, the quest for meaning. Today, teams have this visceral, fundamental need to share strong values with their organization. This isn't just a nice-to-have perk anymore, it's a baseline requirement. But here's the nuance. Their expectations have become so incredibly high that they will inevitably spot the gaps between what's said in boardrooms and what actually happens on the ground. That's step 2. Imagine the scenario where a company loudly pledges net zero emissions, but an employee's daily operations still rely on heavily wasteful, outdated supply chains. The gap is undeniable, right? And keep in mind, this happens even in the most virtuous companies. It's not necessarily deliberate greenwashing from management, but the massive expectations of the employee creating this perceived gap. This brings us to step 3, where this gap creates a brutal personal dissonance. The employee feels complicit. They experience the discrepancy directly as greenwashing. The result? Step 4. It's what we call conscious quitting. People are no longer leaving quietly for a slightly better salary. They're leaving because their core convictions are offended, taking years of institutional knowledge with them. It's a completely new, deeply principled kind of turnover. Moving on to Section 2, financial and regulatory stakes, quantifying the cost. So let's agitate this problem a bit and look at the hard, dizzying financial realities of these behavioral risks, because we simply cannot ignore the bottom line impact anymore. A 15% average turnover rate in France right now is a massive wake-up call. That means nearly 1 in 6 employees is leaving. At this level, we aren't talking about natural, healthy staff rotation. This is an absolute red alert for talent retention. It's essentially internal hemorrhaging. Think about what this means for day-to-day operations. Teams lose their momentum, critical projects totally stall out because key personnel vanish, and the remaining employees are forced to take on double the workload, which, you guessed it, only accelerates further burnout and more quitting. And why does a single departure cost an astronomical 100,000 euros? Well, because this massive figure encompasses way more than just a final paycheck. It includes the silent loss of critical, highly specialized skills. It includes the exploding fees paid to external recruitment agencies, the countless managerial hours spent interviewing, and the immense amount of time required to bring a new hire up to speed. It can literally take 6 to 8 months for a new employee to reach the productivity level of the person who left. And in the meantime, your client relationships can severely suffer. You might not see a specific line item for this phantom cost on a classic balance sheet, but it ruthlessly drains your overall profitability year after year. Now, on top of the financial drain, there is the ever-growing legal risk. Simply uttering the word greenwashing has become a massive corporate vulnerability as regulatory pressure rapidly intensifies. Under the 2021 French climate law, companies face fines up to 1.5 million euros and 10% of their average revenue. But looking at the broader European landscape, it goes even further. The European Green Claims Anti-Greenwashing Directive was proposed in 2023. And yes, it was suspended in 2025. However, we must be absolutely clear on this. This represents an undeniable trend of tightening sanctions that will inevitably be confirmed at the European level. The worst-case scenarios for noncompliance include fines of up to 2 million euros, and most critically, total exclusion from public contracts. Being locked out of public tenders can instantly decimate a company's revenue stream. So inaction is clearly no longer an option. Which brings us to Section 3, the ETHIKYOU solution, your strategic compass. To combat these compounding financial and regulatory threats, outdated annual HR surveys are just totally useless. They're retrospective, they're subjective, and they just don't cut it anymore. Instead, we must turn to ETHIKYOU. This isn't just another survey. It's a robust strategic compass that generates 6 crucial KPIs for corporate governance. We have Indicator 1, turnover exposure, predicting flight risks before they ever happen. Indicator 2 measures exposure to ESG discomfort. 3 identifies precise CSR training needs across your departments. 4 detects hidden internal CSR talent pools. And 5 flags direct greenwashing exposure. But the true game changer here is indicator number 6, intuition to greenwashing. This fundamentally changes the entire equation. It is the ability to anticipate and avoid decisions that will expose the company. Instead of slapping a highly expensive bandage on a massive communications crisis after it explodes in the press, Indicator 6 proactively treats the risk at its behavioral root, course-correcting well before the mistake is ever made. Next up, Section 4, Science and Team, the engine behind the data. Transforming impalpable, invisible human behaviors into ultra-solid, actionable data isn't something you can just improvise. It requires a flawless scientific foundation. Traditionally, behavioral science is pretty fluid and qualitative, deeply rooted in human psychology. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum, accounting, law, and CSR frameworks are incredibly strict, rigid, and binary. Building a reliable bridge between these two opposing worlds was a monumental challenge. To convince decision-makers at the highest level, the model behind ETHIKYOU took 2 full years of multidisciplinary R&D. It successfully connects human psychology, HR, and coaching on one side with strict normative requirements on the other. This exact bridge between fluid human insight and rigid regulatory compliance is what makes the resulting data completely bulletproof. And bringing this rigorous science to life requires an incredibly complementary team, pulling together highly specialized expertise. You have Boris as the founding president, alongside Marguerite as partner, both actively driving the global strategy and vision. To ensure the engine runs perfectly, Kariatu and Cedric lock down the highly critical elements of strict GDPR compliance and complex tech orchestration. Meanwhile, Jacques firmly connects the entire project to the hard realities of investment and financial alignment. The team behind ETHIKYOU doesn't just operate in silos. They form a cohesive unit at the perfect crossroads of human understanding, technological precision, and hard business reality. All right, Section 5. Enterprise Use Cases. Proven ROI. Let's look at some concrete applications and see exactly how this data generates a massive return on investment. Looking at these 5 distinct examples, we can clearly see the real-world impact. Enterprise A simply detected its own hidden internal CSR talents, completely avoiding expensive external hires and saving the cost of multiple full-time equivalents. Enterprise B used ETHIKYOU to identify and securely manage critical internal blind spots before they became liabilities. Enterprise C was actually bordering on a highly damaging case of accidental greenwashing, but successfully corrected course by utilizing the intuition to greenwashing KPI of its on-the-ground teams. For Enterprise D, the data optimized their mandatory CSRD reporting and double materiality analysis by injecting entirely new, highly accurate indicators. And finally, Enterprise E achieved a massive company-wide CSR acculturation, meaning their entire workforce actively shifted its mindset, drastically reducing internal friction and aligning everyone toward the same sustainable goals. As you can see, ETHIKYOU transforms the heavy burden of compliance into measurable strategic assets. Furthermore, beyond just the internal ROI, integrating this behavioral telemetry with rigorous European standards is incredibly strategic. The data directly ensures auditability for the highly critical ESRS S1 and S4 standards under the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. It seamlessly integrates into voluntary frameworks like the Basic and Advanced VSME norm, and it provides highly valuable empirically backed data to greatly enrich EcoVadis assessments, ultimately boosting a company's overall sustainability rating. Finally, Section 6. The social taxonomy future, the upcoming wave. Let's look at the immediate future of regulation, which is shifting dramatically. Right now, the entire market is heavily fixated on the environmental or green taxonomy, which has drastically tightened obligations around carbon footprints, resource usage, and environmental data. But be warned, an identical sweeping hardening of rules is incoming for social data. The European Union clearly realizes that you simply cannot enforce broad environmental mandates without a workforce that is fully aligned, fairly treated, and socially supported. The signal from regulators is unequivocal. Managing internal social data with extreme precision isn't just a nice-to-have HR initiative anymore. It's going to very soon become the unavoidable new standard. So the absolute crucial point to take away from this explainer is this central anchoring thesis. Human social data determines the implementation of environmental decisions, not the reverse. Think about it. You can draft the most ambitious, environmentally friendly policies in the world, but if your workforce is disengaged, experiencing dissonance, or consciously quitting, those policies will never actually be executed. Without human performance effectively measured and managed by social data, sustainable environmental performance simply does not exist. Social and human elements are now taking their rightful place at the absolute heart of ESG strategy. I leave you with this fundamental choice for tomorrow. Will you passively endure compliance, remaining vulnerable to those invisible internal threats that silently sap your profitability and drive away your best talent? Or will you leverage ETHIKYOU's intelligent data to forge a massive competitive advantage, turning risk into real resilience, and absolutely dominate your market? It's this choice and the willingness to look deep inside your own organization that will separate the successful enterprises of the future from those left behind. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep leading with insight.